Good evening and welcome to the Standing Resolution, the show where we take an idea that sounds simple, put it under bright lights, and see how long it holds together. I'm your moderator, Justice Vale, and tonight we have one of those questions that will make you stare at a drinking straw for longer than you ever expected to in your adult life. The resolution before us is this: a straw has two holes. Now that might sound like something you could settle in about 4 seconds, and yet here we are with a full debate, two very prepared advocates, and I suspect a growing sense of unease in all of you who thought you knew the answer before you sat down. One side will stand in favor of the resolution, arguing that yes, a straw has two holes, full stop. The other side will argue against it, contending that the resolution, as stated, does not hold up. And I want to be clear about something before we begin. Neither of these debaters chose their position. Each was assigned the side they are defending tonight. So what you're about to hear is the best possible case for each view, regardless of what anyone personally believes over dinner. That is, frankly, how the most interesting.
Let me start with something we all actually do. You pick up a straw, you put one end in your drink, and you put the other end in your mouth. Two ends, two openings, two holes. Now I expect my opponent tonight is going to reach for topology, the branch of mathematics that treats a straw as a single continuous tunnel, one hole in the topological sense. And that's a genuinely interesting framework. But I want to ask a prior question before we get there: interesting for whom and useful for what? Because here is what topology is actually doing when it calls a straw one hole. It's counting handles. It's asking how many times you could cut around the surface without splitting it into separate pieces. That is a real and valuable question if you're classifying abstract surfaces in a mathematics department. It is not the question a person is answering when they say a straw has holes. In ordinary language, a hole is an opening, a passage through a boundary, and a straw has two of those, one at the top, one at the bottom. You can cover one with your finger and feel the suction change. You can blow through one and watch bubbles appear at the other. The two openings are physically distinct.
Here is what I want you to do. Before you dismiss this, actually picture the straw. Hold it in your mind. Now tell me, where does the first hole end and the second hole begin? You can't, and that's the whole problem with the resolution. Mordecai just gave us a very tidy picture. Two ends, two openings, two holes. But he slipped something past you. He assumed that an opening is the same thing as a hole. And that assumption is doing enormous work, because if we examine it carefully, it doesn't hold. A hole, in any serious sense of the word, is a bounded interruption in a surface. It's where something is missing. Think of a hole in your sock, a hole in a wall, a hole in a piece of paper. In every one of those cases, you have a continuous surface, and then, at some point, that surface is interrupted. The hole is the interruption itself, not the space beyond it. Now look at the straw again. The straw is a single continuous tube. One unbroken surface rolled into a cylinder. That surface doesn't get interrupted anywhere. There's no point along the straw where the material suddenly stops and restarts. What you have at the top and bottom aren't places where the surface is broken. There.
Both sides have drawn a line in the sand, or rather, in the surface of a cylinder, and neither one is blinking. Mordecai says two openings, two holes, end of story. Holly says those aren't holes at all, they're edges, and the whole straw is one hole. When we come back, they get to look each other in the eye and answer for it. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, I'm Justice Vale, and you're watching The Standing Resolution, where tonight we are asking a question that has apparently divided the room on whether a simple drinking straw has two holes or one. Both sides have staked their ground, and now it's time for rebuttals.
Holly's made a distinction I want to take seriously because it sounds precise. Edges are not holes, the straw just ends, nothing is interrupted. I understand the appeal of that argument, but let me show you where it quietly breaks down. Holly's described a hole as a bounded interruption in a surface. A place where something is missing. Fine, now take a piece of paper and punch a hole through it. What do you have? You have an opening in a flat surface. The paper ends at the rim of that hole. By Holly's own logic, that's just an edge. The paper stops there. Nothing is interrupted. It simply ends at a circle. And yet we call it a hole without any hesitation at all. The reason we call it a hole is not because of what the material does, it's because of what the opening allows, passage. Access, the movement of something from one side to the other, that is what a hole does, that is why we care about holes. And a straw provides exactly that twice, at the top passage, at the bottom passage, two distinct locations where the boundary of the object permits entry or exit. You can interact with them separately. You can block one independently of the other. They are not the same location.
Mordecai just said that what makes something a hole is what it allows. Passage, access, movement from one side to the other, and I want to accept that definition because it actually defeats him. If passage is what defines a hole, then the passage is the hole. One passage, one hole. The straw permits one continuous act of passage from one end to the other. You don't pass through the top hole and then separately pass through the bottom hole. You pass through the straw, the whole thing, once. That single act of passage is the hole we're talking about. Now his paper example. He says punch a hole in paper, the paper just ends at the rim and we still call it a hole. He's right that we do, but notice what kind of hole that is. It's a hole through a flat surface, and it has one opening, because a flat surface only has one face we're punching through. The straw is different in exactly the relevant way. It's a tube, not a flat sheet. And when you bore a passage through a tube, both ends of that passage are part of the same hole, not separate holes. Two doorways into the same room don't make two rooms. Two entrances into the same tunnel don't make two tunnels, and two edges of the same.
Mordecai, you've argued that the two openings are holes because they're physically distinguishable and independently blockable. But here's what I want to press you on. If I drill a hole straight through a solid wooden block, I get two openings by that same logic, one where the drill entered, one where it exited. Would you say that block has two holes? And if not, what exactly distinguishes it from a straw?
That is a fair challenge, and I want to answer it honestly rather than dodge it. Yes, I would say the drilled block has two holes, one where the drill entered, one where it exited. That is not a strange result. That is what we actually mean when we describe such an object. A carpenter would say exactly that. Drill a hole through here and a hole through there, and they happen to connect. Now, what distinguishes that from a straw? Very little, and that is my point. The straw is essentially that drilled block with the surrounding material thinned down to almost nothing. The geometry is the same. The functional reality is the same. Two openings, each independently accessible, each serving as a distinct boundary between inside and outside. The fact that the two holes connect does not collapse them into one. A house with a front door and a back door has two doors, even though they both lead to the same interior.
Hollies, you've drawn a firm line between edges and holes. The straw's ends are merely where the surface stops, not where it's interrupted. But here's what I want you to account for. If I take that same straw and cut a small circular opening in its side, midway along the tube, most people would immediately call that a hole. By your framework, why does that count while the two ends don't?
That is exactly the right question to ask, and I think it actually sharpens my position rather than undermining it. When you cut a hole in the side of the straw, you are interrupting a continuous surface. The material was there, and now it isn't. You have created an absence in something that was previously whole. That is what makes it a hole in the truest sense. The surface was unbroken, and now it is broken. The ends of the straw are different in kind, not just degree. The surface never existed there to be interrupted. There is no missing material at the top or bottom. The tube simply terminates. That termination is a feature of the straw's shape, not a wound in its surface. So the side puncture is a hole, because something was removed. The ends are edges because nothing was ever there to remove. That distinction is real, and it is the foundation of my entire argument.
And there it is, the side puncture changes everything, or does it? We are just getting to the best part, because up next is the moment this show is known for, the Steelman round, where each debater has to stand up and make the strongest possible case for the side they've been fighting against all night. Trust me, you want to see that. Welcome back to the Standing Resolution. I'm Justice Vale, and we've been asking all night whether a straw has two holes or one. Now comes the part that separates the good debaters from the great ones, the Steelman round, where each side argues the other's case as well as it can possibly be argued.
Here is the strongest case against the resolution, and I want to give it its full due. The most powerful version of Holly's argument is not really about edges versus openings. It's about what we mean when we count. When you say a thing has two of something, you are claiming there are two discrete separable instances of that thing, two apples, two doors, two holes. And for that claim to hold, the two instances have to be genuinely independent, not two aspects of a single continuous feature. The straw's passage is not two things. It is one thing, one unbroken void running the entire length of the tube. The void doesn't divide in the middle. There is no seam, no wall, no point of separation between the upper part of the passage and the lower part. If you tried to remove one hole while keeping the other, you would fail, because they are not two objects, they are one object seen from two ends. That is a real and serious point. Counting is not just pointing at surfaces. Counting requires genuine discreteness, and the straw's passage may not have it. I take that argument seriously, and then I ask, where does the same logic stop? A hallway is a single continuous passage too, we still.
Here is the strongest case for the other side, and I want to give it the respect it deserves. The real power of the two-hole argument is not about topology or abstract surfaces. It's about functional reality. When you put your finger over one end of a straw, something happens. The drink stops rising. When you lift your finger, it flows again. That one end is doing something. It is acting as a distinct boundary, a distinct point of control, a distinct interface between the straw and the world. And the other end is doing something entirely different at the same time. One end is in your mouth. One end is in the drink. They are not interchangeable. They are not aspects of the same thing. They are two separate sites of action, and the most natural word for a site where a surface opens to permit passage is a hole. That is a serious argument. It grounds the count of two in something real and observable, not just in convention or casual speech. And yet I still hold my position, because functional independence does not create ontological separateness. Two windows in a room are functionally independent too. Covering one doesn't cover the other, but they are still two windows in one room.
We have heard both sides argue their own position, and then turn around and argue the other one with equal conviction. If you are not sure what you believe about a drinking straw right now, that is exactly where you should be. Stay with us, closing arguments are next, and one of these two is about to make it click. Welcome back, I'm Justice Vale, and this is the standing resolution, where tonight a simple drinking straw has managed to tie two very sharp minds in a genuinely elegant knot. We've heard the cases, we've heard the concessions, and now each side gets one last shot to make it land. Closing arguments.
Here is what this debate has really been about, not topology, not the philosophy of surfaces. It has been about whether we count what we can touch and use, or whether we count only what satisfies a particular abstract definition. Holly's argued that the ends of a straw are merely edges, not holes, because nothing was interrupted. But we established together that a punched hole in paper works exactly the same way. The paper ends at the rim. We call it a hole anyway because a hole is defined by what it permits, not by what it destroyed to get there. We established that each end of a straw is independently blockable, independently functional, independently located in space. One end does something the other end does not. They are not the same place. They are not the same thing. Holly's most elegant move was to say the passage is one, therefore the hole is one. But I would ask you to notice that this argument, taken seriously, would also tell you that a hallway has no doors, only edges where the wall happens to stop. That is a conclusion that should give us pause. The burden was on the skeptic to show that ordinary counting, grounded in physical reality and common use, had gotten tea.
Mordecai just told you the world is exactly as straightforward as it first appeared. But that is precisely the move I have been questioning all night. The straightforward appearance is not the same as the correct answer. Here is what we actually established. A hole in a side of a straw counts because material was interrupted. The ends of a straw are where the material simply terminates, where it was never present to begin with. That distinction is real. That distinction matters. He says the passage is one, but the openings are two, and therefore the holes are two. But openings are how you reach the hole. They are not the hole itself. The hole is the void, the passage, the single continuous space running the full length of the tube without interruption, without division, without a seam anywhere along it. Mordecai counted entrances and called them holes. But if entrances were holes, every doorway would be a hole, every window would be a hole, every opening in every surface would earn that name. At some point, the word stops meaning anything useful. The straw is one passage, one unbroken void, one hole that happens to face both directions. You don't pass through two holes when you tea.
And there you have it. Mordecai Quill told you to count what you can touch: 2 openings, 2 functions, 2 holes, plain and simple. Holly's Vega told you to count the passage itself: 1 void, 1 tunnel, 1 hole that merely faces both ways. Both of them, at various points tonight, made me genuinely reconsider a drinking straw, which is not a sentence I expected to say this week. Neither of them is walking away with the trophy tonight, because that decision belongs entirely to you. Take it home, argue about it at dinner, hold a straw up to the light and make your call. If you want to weigh in on what we debate next, head over to Paxelle.tv. The next resolution is up for a vote, and knowing this audience, I expect it will be something equally simple on the surface and completely maddening underneath. One quick word before we go: the standing resolution features AI personas, and the positions you heard tonight were assigned, not chosen. What you got was the best possible case for each side, not anyone's personal conviction. The goal is always a fair fight and a real argument, and I hope that's what you felt tonight. To Mordecai and Holly's assigned corners, genuine craft.